everyone. Welcome back to Astrology Today with Jeff Harmon. I'm Ella, Jeff's assistant. Thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So tonight, we are going to talk about AI and advanced technology and the effect that all of this is having on us, on our soul, on our psyche, on our spirit. We're really going to go into that. But of course, first, Jeff is going to touch on some current events.
All right. Yes, we will do that. A lot of current events to talk about. Well, one positive thing I want to bring up is we just had a Jupiter-Venus conjunction, and everybody was talking about that. That's the same one the wise men saw. So it's pretty good. I always like to talk about positive things, right? So we do have a lot of good positive things going on. On the other flip side of the coin, I also want to mention, too, that I've had some interesting reports coming in. I always get people talking to me and sending me requests and emails and so on and so forth, and during sessions. And a couple of things that were brought to my attention was the election stuff. And I went, come on, this is 2023. That was almost 3 years ago now, right? And get over it. It's the way it is, but they're like, no, you got to see here. There's a report that all these ballot boxes from China were found in Sacramento. And I looked at the report and I went, wow, you're right. It looks like if this report's accurate, it's true. And then I heard about somebody in like a senator or an alderman getting busted in California for something to do with election fraud. And then I got another report that Zuckerberg had donated like $2 million illegally to the election and that it was a state violation. Now, of course, we know that, the owners will tell all the, Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Insanity to look the other way. But, so I got the question asked in an interrogation, hey, by any chance, is anything ever going to happen? And then they brought up the Brunson case. And I said, well, the Brunson case has been thrown out the window, and actually about 4 times now I hear, or 3 times, something like that. It's been a bunch of times. I don't know the amount. But apparently the Supreme Court heard it and they threw it out the window. And for anybody who's not familiar, you can Google the Brunson case. So anyways, apparently the person was right. And they said it's back in. And I don't know whether or not it's going to get legs. And, again, we're seeing reality manipulated so much here in the last few years. It's almost mind warping and in so many ways. And anyways, so what I did is, I was prompted to cast a chart. Actually got it right here. And it was basically, will this election stuff ever get exposed? And, of course, we've got the entire army of the media beating us over the head, telling us what to believe, that, it's conspiracies, it's this and that. And I thought, okay, let's just go by the chart. So I cast the chart. And interestingly enough, this looks interesting. I'll just say that. I'll say that there's a possibility this could get legs more than we may know. And I found that really kind of interesting. There was actually translation and collection of light between the judicial branch, which would mean the Supreme Court, and the government head, like the administration of the Biden administration, which would be the 10th house, the president and the sun. And it's very interesting energies here. So we know that, these people are clearly above the law. They get away with whatever they want to get away with, and they do. But this chart was encouraging. I'll say that. So I remain open-minded. This actually looks pretty good. So what do you think of that, Ella?
Mm-hmm. So give us a little more detail on what the chart actually said.
Well, the first thing, I always look at, are reports and rumors true? Well, when in the astrology, if the angles are fixed, and when I say the angles, people listening to astrologers talk is kind of like listening to Swahili. But what that means is if the eastern horizon, but particularly where the sun is at noon, called the midheaven, is a fixed sign, and the 4th house is a fixed sign, there is truth to the rumors. And I don't think we need astrology for that one, but there certainly does seem to be truth to these rumors that the people were reporting. And of course, I saw some of them on the internet. Secondly, most importantly, is it showed many people are still very angry about this. And of course, we see Mars in the ascendant. And most importantly, the moon was translating light. Now, that's a fancy term astrologers use, where it's making a good geometric aspect to Mercury in the midheaven. And then Mercury conjuncts the 10th, which is the government. So plain English on all of this, there's validity to something could happen, that actually something could get exposed. Now, will anybody, these people like eels, they slip out of everything.
Oh, yeah. Will anybody be held responsible?
Will anybody be held responsible? It is possible that something could be adjudicated. It would create mayhem in this country. And I think at least half of the country would be aghast because they've been lighted, and they don't even understand that that was a possibility. They think it's, again, tune in to Communist Controlled News Network, and they'll tell you exactly what to think and how to think and what to believe. So, yeah, I think this would create mayhem. But it's interesting. I responded to the inquiries and I cast the chart. So I think it came out that something could come of this, and it's going to be very interesting. When? Could be soon. Maybe in the next few months, 2.5 months or so. Again, one of the other news things I wanted to bring up kind of dovetails into this. And remember, we've been putting out some podcasts saying that literally the United States is probably under some of the most intense energies it's ever been under. We have a Pluto return. And remember, Pluto only happens about every 240 to 50 years. In the United States, is 246 years old. And also, we have, most importantly, literally on March 11th, we have Saturn conjuncting the moon in the sidereal chart for the first of 3 times this year. Happens again really strongly in the fall. We'll get to that in later podcasts. But this is the first one coming right up, right around the corner. I mean, we're already into March. This is March 11th that's going to happen. Also, really important, we are also going to see on the 7th of March, Mars is going to be squared. The final aspect, Mars is squaring, or I should say Neptune is squaring the United States Mars. That is the energy that happened right before the Civil War. Now, I don't believe we're going to ever see anything like that, though. But on the other hand, I would say what we're really seeing is dissension. And the United States has been being attacked on every front. The borders are overrun, the fentanyl, the, war on crime, the soft, releasement of so many hard criminals, not getting any charges at all for some really heinous crimes and damage to innocent people in America is not a good thing. Innocent people are sitting in prison. So many. Yeah.
For years and years and years. And people who are actually committing heinous crimes are just walking around.
You're exactly right. Yeah. It's really, really been insanity. In fact, it's mind control. When you think about what's really going on, communism used to be in the past. And, I've been warning forever that 2020 was the trigger point. Everyone was worried about the Mayan calendar. Right? And I said, forget about the Mayan calendar. I can't come up with anything on that. But watch out from 2020 forward. Why? This was when the portals really opened. We had this new conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in the air trine. Very powerful, ushering in a high-tech world like we have never seen before. Plus, we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction exactly, and I mean precisely when COVID was released. And that's the other news. A lot of reports coming out. Even the FBI director, which is pretty unbelievable, Christopher Wray, actually said, hey, you know what? We're actually believing that it came out of Wuhan. We see evidence that it came out of Wuhan lab. And again, the other night on Tucker Carlson, I'm really surprised Tucker Carlson's still drawing breath. He should check the brakes on his car every night he goes home. But I can tell you, I'm very surprised that he reports on some of the things that he has. And he had a lady on the other night who's a doctor, a Chinese doctor. This is not somebody who said, I think it came out of Wuhan. No, this is a doctor who worked on a lab team in Wuhan lab. She defected from China and the Wuhan lab and warned everybody this was happening, came to the United States. She's actually seeking asylum here. And she is literally saying, I work there. I worked on the program. I'm not a janitor. I'm a doctor. I was like working on the project itself. And it was released, and it was almost purposely exposed, in her opinion, from what I understood. So this is some big news. It really is. And then we've also got the war in Ukraine ratcheting up even higher. We see literally a blank check or a bottomless pit of expenses going to go to Ukraine. Now, I agree, it's horrible what the innocent people in Ukraine are going through. But on the other hand, Russia is gearing up. And we had mentioned, it didn't look like China was going to supply them lethal weapons, but I hear that they might supply them some drones. And, I'm sure they're helping with purchasing copious amounts of oil that they need because China doesn't have much oil. So we're seeing, again, just like we've been saying, the world stage is ratcheting up. And that brings us to tonight's topic a little bit too, because all this kind of fits. We've heard the horrors of wars and communism. And I think what we got going on right now is a new form of communism. It's called technocracy. And that's a word that's been thrown around that I've heard. And I thought, well, that makes sense because this fits with the astrology of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction and the Saturn-Pluto. It's like these new one world orders, they knew that these energies were going to converge in 2020, and they certainly seem to be very prepared on all fronts: media, social media, the COVID thing, everything else. And, I'll be called a conspiracy theorist, but clearly something very questionable went on with the COVID whole release. It was very questionable. And
absolutely. And it's not about being a conspiracy theorist. It's about opening your eyes and taking a good look at what's really going on here, because I think we can all see, and we really know, remember George Carlin, we joke about this all the time when he said, you have owners, and you mentioned the owners a few minutes ago, and we really do. And the more we understand that, the better off we'll all be, because nothing happens here unless the owners want it. And then that leads us to talking about demonic forces, right? And then that also will lead us to talk about all the angels. So they're going to clash. And they're constantly clashing since the beginning of time, it seems like, when you really look at history and what's been going on this planet forever. So
the astrology showed this was coming, and it did. It was so accurate. It was creepy. Secondly, what shows, and I've been talking a lot about this on different radio shows and podcasts, that the United States has some progressions and transits that are all coming in this year that are exceedingly powerful. We have, for the first time ever, primary directed Mars conjoining the U.S. moon in the third house. I've never seen that before in my lifetime or in anyone's lifetime, because it's taken 246 years to come around the United States chart and actually make a conjunction. Exceedingly powerful. And I can tell you, and I hope I'm wrong, I really hope I can eat crow on this one someday, that, oh, geez, nothing happened. But I think we're going to see some very dangerous stuff happen this year. We're already seeing attacks on food processing plants. We're seeing attacks on energy, on power plants and power substations, all kinds of stuff. There's clearly energies going on here that are not just happenstance. And, this is planned. I mean, I was just on the phone today, or I should say in a session today, with a client in the UK who says the heating bills for her and her mother have now risen close to 3 to 4 times in the last month and a half. Well, the Nord Stream pipeline was going to lower all that. It has decimated the European economy. And there's some very questionable stuff on that. Clearly, Biden said in front of the high-def camera, well, he didn't say it, he read his teleprompter, and he basically said, we will stop, the Nord Stream pipeline one way or another. Well, somebody sure did. And there's some very mysterious investigations that have never been released by, I think it was some of the northern countries. It might have been Finland or Norway or somebody. But anyhow, it's all been very murky and mysterious. I can't imagine Putin would have blown up his own pipeline. Now, that doesn't whitewash Putin. He's no angel either over there blowing innocent people apart. So war is a hideous and vile game. Nobody wins in it ultimately other than the arms manufacturers and the bankers funding them. And certainly not the poor young people on both sides of the fence who are getting blown apart because like George Carlin said, war is when old men in business suits send young people to war for their business interests. And it's true. And there are some just wars, no question. But I think some of them are definitely instigated and pushed along for the profit's sake of arms. And I think there's a very mysterious set of circumstances that we're not being told the truth on in this whole Ukrainian issue. I think, again, the people who suffer are the innocent people of the countries. And, it's not... Most people who are in armies don't want to go kill the other people on the other side. They're doing it because they're told to, or they'll be put in prison or shot for treason. So, and that's been the history throughout humanity. It's always been that way. It's like Dr. Zhivago. That movie always struck me, where Dr. Zhivago said he didn't want to fight. And they put a gun to his head and said, you'll fight or you'll die. Okay, so off he goes. And this has always been the MO. It's always been the threats, the coercion that makes people do what they do. Anyways, we're certainly in a very interesting set of times. And, I have to say also Mars by transit, it literally happens, I think, right on about the 11th, also 10th or 11th. It might be the 12th. Yeah, it's the 12th of March, approximately. Mars in the sidereal zodiac will start to activate the United States air trine. Now, that's significant because Saturn, the Sadhisate I've been talking about, which is the fancy term for Saturn going over the United States moon exactly, is also in an air trine. So think of an electrical circuit. When you flip a switch, you connect the circuit and the lights come on, or whatever it is you're turning on. This is very analogous to how the geometry and astrology works. And we got a lot of circuits connecting here that are very, very volatile and very, very powerful this year on this country. And let's hope it goes by without the incidents that they could go by with. And we're going to find out, but I can tell you the trigger points are really there. So that's kind of my news update. And you wanted to go into the next subject. So why don't you tell everybody?
Well, yeah, just about the AI and the advanced technology. It's exciting to talk about all that in terms of how it really is affecting us all. All of it, the social media, because that's a huge part of it, all of this. In a sense, artificial intelligence, it's really quite bizarre. And, there are good parts to it. And then there's all the wild stuff. I'll put it that way. But we were hearing today about Elon Musk and SpaceX, right? And how he's going to be sending his rocket up. And it's supposed to be, the most amazing thing in the world. So, but we're living in a time now where everything just feels so intense, and all of the talk about AI and advanced technology seems to, for me, kind of weigh on the soul, weigh on the spirit in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yes, it does. And, that's a really great topic that we wanted to talk about tonight. And, there's been a lot of movies that have addressed this. Look at iRobot. Look at the Terminator series particularly. And I think this has been a fascination with humanity for a long, long time. Look at 2001 Space Odyssey. All these things where it's the human spirit pitted against machine, and how the very creations that we create tend to be our nemesis, and when you think about that, look at Terminator. Terminator 2 to me was probably one of my favorite movies. Not only was the production incredible, but I think what I liked the most about it was, that's when Arnold Schwarzenegger was sent back to be the protector of John Connor, who was the survivor of the human race, who led humans to overcome the very machines that they created that destroyed most of humanity. And of course, that was where, it became self-aware and blew up, the entire world with nuclear weapons. Well, not a far-fetched scenario. And I loved at the end of the movie where, the script said, Arnold Schwarzenegger's character said, listen, there's one more chip left after the bad guy was destroyed, the metallized Terminator. And he said, I have to be destroyed. And he said, and now I know why, that I can't stay. And he says, because I can't cry like you do. And that really was a really, I think, excellent element. And human beings are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and we truly are. We have emotions, we have anger, we have happy, sadness, all these things that you can't make a computer do. You could program it to act like it, to mimic it, but they're never going to evoke it on their own. Think about that. If it searches a database like Arnold Schwarzenegger's character did when the guy says, hey, what do you got in there? A dead cat? And then, of course, he selects the, FU, thing. And it was really interesting to see that, because that's exactly how a computer works. It accesses rapidly database much more efficiently than we do. And we're not, we're spiritual beings. We have deductive reasoning. We have a spirit, a psyche, and a soul, and very deep stuff. And, we're all programmed in this world to learn and become efficient and become, responsible and thing, all of which is good. But, the religions have all talked about something called a conscience. Well, you're not going to get AI to have a conscience. You could mimic one where it would access it, but that would still be programmed, you see?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that we're the ones creating all this AI, right?
Humanity's always created its own problems.
Yeah. So are we creating a problem that is going to be a really big problem? Or are we creating something that will just help us to move forward in a positive way?
Well, now you run into the quagmire and the Gordian knot that we always run into. The same thing the legal system runs into. We're creating something to make life easier. AI clearly can serve a lot of menial tasks and labor that people used to do in assembly lines, and many, many other things, and menial labor tasks. That's coming. It's absolutely coming. I'm telling you, our lives are already so changed since 2020. Wait. It's going to accelerate so fast. The problem is when you get despotic people who seize this, who want to use it against the human race and incarcerate it for their own ends of power. And that is always the demonic force. I was amazed. I heard Klaus Schwab I can't remember if it was the WEF or one of the forums that just went by. And I literally thought I was listening to an Austin Powers movie, and he was Dr. Evil. Even the way he spoke, he's like, whoever controls AI will be the ruler of the world. My head spun around. I went, wait a minute. Am I listening to an Austin Powers movie? Is this guy really for real? And he was. I mean,
yeah.
Now that's scary.
That is scary.
Because the fact that you would even say the words, the ruler of the world, who wants to be the ruler of the world? I don't want to rule this world, And these idiots will find the divine rules this world. God rules this world. It sure as heck isn't people, though people sure seem to step in and do a lot of trouble. And you do need laws and you do need structures, but we also need to keep AI in check, and I think that's been the theme of many Hollywood movies, which is really smart, because it is clear, and there's probably many others I'm not thinking. Well, look at Blade Runner, really interesting. That was another same theme where, the AI had become so advanced that you couldn't tell it apart from humans. And then, it was a war on humans. And there's been many, many movies like that. Bruce Willis is in one. I forget the name of it. But this is clearly going to be a theme of the future. I know the military has invested exceedingly heavy into AI. Again, I have clients, they can't say a lot, but I hear enough to know that there's some substantial investment and has been. You know, we hear about X-Men. What's that?
Right? The military's been investing in AI for years.
Yeah, for years. Again, I had a gentleman who was really dear to me. He came to work at my studio back in the 80s, and he was amazing. He was on a research design team in the military in World War II who developed the original plan position radar for the bombers in World War II. And that was prior to Doppler radar, which we have on our weather and all that. He was probably one of the smartest men I've ever met. Amazing mind. Sit there with his Lucky Strike and talk away, cigarettes. And I loved him. But he said he was involved in think tanks where they would literally do studies to see how efficient is human capability. And he said best we hit was maybe 50, 55%, 60 tops, depending on who it was. Why? We got to go to the bathroom. We got to sleep. We got to eat. We got to rest, right? We can become emotional. Oh, I got to take a break. I'm sick. All this stuff. And when it comes to hardcore left brain efficiency and making money, right? We don't want that. We want obedient workers, you see. So AI is the solution to making and manufacturing things. But the military is going to look for solutions for, hey, instead of getting guys blown apart, we'll just send machines out there that can take bullets and take, shrapnel and keep right on going to their objective, which is taking out the enemy. So this is where we're seeing the drones and the unmanned aircraft. And I hear there's some very advanced foot soldiers already that are in design. And we've heard about, the X-Men and the Bourne Identity. I hear that stuff has been going on a long, long time in underground laboratories and other places where they've developed very advanced hybrid human, almost like Terminator, hybrid human machines. And very, very interesting stuff. So I think the message that I can say is it almost reminds me of the flood of Noah, where divine, or you want to say God, destroyed the world because there was all this genetic manipulation. And we heard about giants and all that stuff and many, many mutations that were going on. And there was, if you read the Keys of Enoch and some of these texts, it actually talks about how there was interbreeding going on and genetic manipulation, much, much different than maybe the story actually is told from what I've heard. So that is very possible. And it does seem like the earth has gone through many cycles throughout, and no one knows how old it is. Look at Tartarian. The Tartarian documents are amazing because they're discovering all this architecture and free energy machines that seem to get destroyed. So, pretty interesting stuff.
Is that the divine always seems to hold us here. It
always does. And it always will. And, I think that's where we need to keep ourselves. A lot of injustices happen, but I really believe that that's always evened out at some point in what we call evolution of incarnation or time, but maybe not in this lifetime. But sometimes I think that does happen. So this is a profound time that we're in. We're going to be talking a lot more this year about these cycles as they happen, because again, the United States has an immense amount of cycles. This month, this March, because we're already into March now, is really an eventful month. Again, we got Saturn coming over the moon of the United States, very powerful. We've also got the Mars activating the air trine and the Neptune finishing the square to Mars. And that is the trickery and the subterfuge that I've been talking about, where they urinate down your back and tell you it's raining. So we'll see what happens.
Right. 2023, 2024, not supposed to be intense years. We're already living it. We didn't touch on inflation. I just want to talk about that for a second before we close, because it's affecting so many people.
It really is.
And I don't see when it's going to stop, where it's going to stop. It's affecting so many people.
Well, that kind of parallels what I think is going on. There's a war not only on the Constitution and the country, but there's a war on humanity right now. And this fits in with the technocracy. It also fits in with the whole issues of AI and all this technology serpentining around us. I mean, they really want digital currency. They really want to have microchips in your head or mRNA in your veins and, control it with 5G. There's all kinds of scenarios out there that I've been hearing. And are they true? They just might be. The thing, and in fact, I think they definitely are. But call me a conspiracy theorist, but there's strong evidence to it. The long story short, there's an attack right now on energy, food processing plants, petrochemicals. And why is this happening? I really believe they're out to destroy this country. They're infiltrating the border with fentanyl and drugs and terrorist cells, I've been hearing. We've got district attorneys under the guise of, we want to help criminality by rehabilitating them. And yet they're actually increasing criminality. The statistics are overwhelming. Lori Lightfoot just lost the election in Chicago. Thank God. I mean, murders and shootings have jumped like 270% in Chicago. I used to live just north of Chicago. That's a beautiful town. I used to go down to Chicago all the time. What a beautiful, nostalgic American town that now people are fleeing. The real estate has been dropping like a rock. So we're seeing inflation because of the attack that the Biden administration is making on the oil and energy industries. And it's all under the guise of the climate change, the global warming. Well, we've had the coldest winter I've ever experienced in 40 something years in California. And the weather, of course, they'll blame any storm on global warming. But I personally think it's the sun and the sunspots. So they're using this to thwart energy production and good energy production that's actually fairly clean. And they're now jacking up the prices exponentially. If you keep ratcheting up diesel fuel like you have, and look at California, they're basically making it illegal to own a diesel semi. Well, how else are you going to get goods to the store? You can take a mule and a cart. Semis are very efficient. And yes, Elon Musk has the, new electric semis, but those are A, expensive, and B, it takes a lot of power to charge them. And that actually can cause more greenhouse gases by far than the diesel fuel itself. Mm-hmm. So when you look at what it takes to charge them, to charge a semi, you're talking 3-phase power. You don't plug those into the wall and stand around and, get lunch while it's charging up. That takes it's 450 volts from what I hear, 440 volts, 3-phase. So it's very powerful. And that takes a lot of energy on a power grid that they're already depleting because they're shutting down all the coal plants. This is insanity. It's an attack on the economy. I think they're trying to break the middle class so they can bring in their technocratic or technocracy of new communism, which is digital control. And in the meantime, we've got the IRS arming up. They're over there training right now to tax and audit everyone. So this is really and this fits to the astrology to the T, because these Pluto returns, the Saturn over the moon, and all these other very, very challenging aspects are equaling, I think, what we're seeing. So inflation, I don't know that I see it ending right now until something happens. I think there's a war happening at the top of the pyramid between the owners at the top of the pyramid and many high-level intelligence and military people. But they're very compromised because they're kind of like Washington and the Revolutionary Army. They're barefoot and they haven't got the tools to go back after these exceedingly well-funded people by the owners who own the system. So we're kind of in a really interesting situation that I hope we get divine intervention on. And we just might, if we're lucky. We just might. But these are some of the most trying times this country has ever seen.
Yeah. Intense energies, intense times.
Yep. I talked to a person in Belgium, said the heating bills up at least 4 times.
Oh, yeah.
4 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at the gas bills here in California, how it's gone up 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
In the 70s, I used to fill up my motorcycle with the reserve is almost 5 gallons. $2.50, maybe $2.70. Now you can't even get a gallon of gas for that. Now, granted, that was, half a century ago almost now, but that's a lot.
But still, look at where everything is at. That's why it's so important to stay tuned in, tapped in to what's truly going on. So we know how to protect ourselves and make educated choices, right?
Just to give you a comparison on the fuel, my grandmother, when, she was around when cars first came out. She was born in 1907. And of course, the first cars started rolling around in the dirt roads somewhere in the 20s out where she lived by the farm. And my uncles and my grandmother told me that, gas, I think, was like 25 cents a gallon, 18 cents a gallon, something like that. So it went, whatever it was, I think it was came out at like 15 or 18 cents a gallon in the early days. Then it jumped maybe to 20 and then 25 cents. Well, in the 70s, it was only in the 30-cent range. And they had gas wars at 24, 25, 27 cents. I remember it as a kid. Totally remember it. And in the 60s is when I remember that. So totally remember all of that. And so it only jumped in ratio from 18 cents to maybe just a little less than double or about double in what? You're talking what, maybe 45, 50 years? Okay, right. We went from 30 to maybe 38 cents in the 70s to now it's like quadrupled. It's more than that. It's quintupled. And it's just gone way past. I mean, what are we at? $4.80 a gallon for premium out here. $4.50 for regular. Diesel fuel should be cheaper. It always has been. It's now pushing $6 a gallon.
Close to $7 in some areas. Yep.
Yeah. In dystopia, right? In California, we call it dystopia now. So yeah. So.
That's right. Still a beautiful place. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Love the land. I love the land.
Yep. Well, let's see how this all plays out, right? Let's see how it all plays out. Thanks.
It looks like a rough couple of years. I think they're making their moves.
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you for your comments. And please continue to leave them and take good care of yourselves. And we'll see you next Friday.
You bet. Thank you for watching.